We're looking at the first section of the LCE study. Let's begin by defining the Logistics Combat Element, commonly referred to as the LCE. The Logistics Combat Element is a critical component of the Marine Air-Ground Task Force, responsible for providing the support functions that allow combat forces to operate effectively during missions. A Logistics Combat Element, LCE, is task-organized to provide the full range of combat service support necessary to accomplish the Marine Air-Ground Task Force, MAGTAV mission. The LCE provides the logistics and service support required to sustain Marine forces during operations. Without these capabilities, combat units would not be able to maintain equipment, transport supplies, or support personnel during missions. These support functions ensure that Marine forces receive the resources, maintenance, and services required to sustain operations in the field. For example, supply and transportation ensure that equipment, fuel, and provisions reach operational units, while medical and dental services support the health and readiness of personnel. In addition to logistical support, the LCE also provides administrative and operational services that support the overall functioning of the Marine Force during operations. These services ensure that the force can operate efficiently, responsibly, and in accordance with military and legal standards. After defining the Logistics Combat Element, we now turn our attention to Combat Service Support, commonly referred to as CSS. Combat Service Support represents the functions and capabilities that sustain military forces during operations. In simple terms, Combat Service Support ensures that military forces have the resources, maintenance, transportation, and services required to continue operating during missions. Without CSS, combat units would not be able to maintain operational effectiveness for extended periods. These support areas ensure that operational forces receive the equipment, supplies, transportation, and medical care required during operations. For example, supply systems provide ammunition, fuel, and equipment, while maintenance ensures that vehicles and weapons remain operational. The Marine Logistics Group is the primary organization responsible for delivering combat service support to Marine forces. Units assigned to this role are specifically organized, equipped, and trained to perform logistics and support operations that sustain the MAGTAV during missions. Combat Service Support provides the essential logistics and service capabilities required to sustain Marine forces and enable successful MAGTAV operations on the battlefield. In this section, we will define several important logistics and organizational terms used within Marine Corps operations. Understanding these terms is important because they describe how equipment, personnel, and resources are organized and managed to support operational units. A limited technical inspection is used to evaluate the condition of equipment and determine what maintenance actions may be required. For example, maintenance personnel may conduct an LTI to determine whether a piece of equipment requires repair, servicing, or replacement of parts before it can return to operational use. The Table of Authorized Material helps logistics planners determine what materials and supplies are authorized for use by specific Marine Corps organizations. This document helps ensure that units receive the correct materials needed to support their operational missions. The Table of Equipment identifies the equipment required for a unit to perform its mission effectively. When combined with the Table of Organization, it helps determine what equipment, manuals, and additional resources are necessary for that unit's operations. The Table of Organization defines how a unit is structured and staffed. It outlines the personnel positions, responsibilities, and operational capabilities required for the unit to carry out its assigned mission. These documents and inspection procedures help ensure that Marine Corps units are properly organized, equipped, and maintained to support operational missions within the MAGTAV. Now let's talk about logistics. Logistics is defined as the science of planning and carrying out the movement and maintenance of forces. In military operations, logistics focuses on the systems and activities that ensure personnel, equipment, and resources are properly supported so that operations can continue effectively. Logistics deals with several important aspects of military operations. The first aspect involves the design, development, acquisition, storage, movement, distribution, maintenance, evacuation, and disposition of material. This means logistics manages how equipment and materials are created, obtained, stored, transported, maintained, and eventually disposed of when they are no longer needed. For example, logistics ensures that equipment such as vehicles, tools, or supplies are properly stored, maintained, and delivered to the units that require them. Another important aspect involves the movement, evacuation, and hospitalization of personnel. This includes transporting personnel when necessary, evacuating individuals from operational areas when required, and ensuring that personnel receive medical care when they are injured or become ill. Logistics also includes the acquisition or construction and disposition of facilities. This means obtaining or building the facilities required to support operations, such as bases, storage areas, or operational support structures. Finally, logistics includes the acquisition or furnishing of services. These services support military operations and ensure that forces have the necessary support systems in place to carry out their mission effectively. In simple terms, logistics ensures that materials, personnel, facilities, and services are properly planned, organized, and supported, so that military forces can continue operating and accomplish their mission. Now let's look at the 3 levels of logistic support. This system structures how resources are planned and delivered to support military forces. The levels are strategic, operational, and tactical. The first level is strategic. At this level, a nation determines its security objectives and develops plans to achieve them. Strategic logistics uses national resources to support operations, establishing military objectives and global war plans. For instance, a government may plan how supplies are distributed to different regions. The second level is the operational level, where campaigns and major operations are planned and sustained to achieve strategic goals. This level connects strategy with tactical actions by establishing the necessary sequence of events. Activities focus on ensuring logistic support is available for tactical forces in the theater. An operational command might coordinate logistics to support several units within a region. The third level is the tactical level. Tactical logistics is where battles and engagements are planned and executed. It focuses on how units are organized and maneuvered to achieve combat objectives. At this level, logistics involves delivering ammunition, fuel, or medical support directly to units engaged in operations. In summary, logistics support operates across 3 levels: strategic for national objectives, operational for campaigns, and tactical for battlefield execution. Together, they ensure forces are supported effectively. Now let's look at the functional areas of tactical logistics. Tactical logistics within the MAGTAV is organized into several functional areas that support military operations in the field. These functional areas ensure that personnel, equipment, and resources are properly supported so that operations can continue effectively. The first 3 functional areas we will discuss are supply, maintenance, and transportation. Supply is the cyclic process of acquiring and issuing material to supported units. The materials provided through supply may include consumable materials, durable materials, components, and end items. Consumable materials are items that are used during operations, while durable materials and end items are equipment or resources that can be used repeatedly. For example, supply systems ensure that units receive the materials they require to carry out their mission. Maintenance involves the actions taken to keep equipment and materials in serviceable condition, as well as actions required to restore equipment to serviceable condition. This includes preventive maintenance, which helps prevent failures, and corrective maintenance, which restores equipment after a malfunction occurs. Maintenance tasks are grouped by levels of support, which determine which units are responsible for performing specific maintenance activities. Transportation involves moving personnel, equipment, and supplies from one location to another. The transportation system includes both the means of transportation and the controls used to manage those transportation assets. Although transportation is discussed as a logistics function, at the tactical level it also serves as a combat support function, since combat units rely on transportation assets for tactical movement. Combat organizations may use organic, attached, or supporting transportation assets to move personnel, equipment, and supplies during operations. General engineering is distinct from combat engineering. General engineering is typically considered a logistics combat element function, while combat engineering is considered a combat support function. At the tactical level, general engineering assets may be used to reinforce or augment combat engineer organizations during certain operations. These assets normally operate in general support of the MAGTAV, and can support tasks related to mobility, counter-mobility, and survivability. General engineering tasks often require more detailed planning, preparation, and higher standards of design and construction than typical combat engineering tasks. Health services support, often referred to as HSS, focuses on minimizing the effects that wounds, injuries, and disease may have on unit effectiveness, readiness, and morale. Health services support also includes a preventive medicine program, which helps safeguard personnel against potential health risks. In addition, it establishes a system that provides medical support from the point of wounding, injury, or illness, ensuring that personnel receive appropriate care. For example, treatment in the field. The final functional area is services. Services support the effective administration, management, and employment of military organizations. These services are primarily administrative in nature and can include postal, dispersing, information systems, and legal services. These services are categorized as either command services provided by individual commands or LCE services provided by a logistics unit. These functional areas, general engineering, health services support, and services, complete the 6 functional areas of tactical logistics. Together, they ensure that forces operating within the MAGTAV receive the full range of support required to sustain operations. Next, we have principles of logistics support. There are 7 principles of logistics support that apply to all 3 levels of logistics. These principles are important because they help guide how logistics operations are planned, organized, managed, and executed. Similar to the principles of war, these principles are guides rather than strict rules. In some situations, only 1 or 2 of these principles may apply. Effective logisticians apply these principles with flexibility, innovation, and coordination in order to increase logistics effectiveness. Responsiveness means providing the right support, in the right place, at the right time. Among the principles of logistics, responsiveness is considered the keystone principle. This is because if logistics support does not support the commander's concept of operations, then the other logistics principles become irrelevant. For example, supplies or equipment arriving too late may prevent a unit from accomplishing its mission. Simplicity promotes efficiency in both the planning and execution of logistics operations. Using mission-type orders and standardized procedures helps simplify logistics processes. In addition, the establishment of priorities and the pre-allocation of supplies and services by the supported unit can help make logistics operations easier to manage. By keeping systems and procedures simple, logistics support can be delivered more effectively. Flexibility refers to the ability to adapt logistics structures and procedures to changing situations, missions, and concepts of operation. Logistics plans and operations must remain flexible in order to achieve both responsiveness and economy. Flexibility may include alternative planning, anticipation, reserve assets, redundancy, forward support of phase logistics, and centralized control with decentralized operations. These concepts allow logistics support to adjust when operational conditions change. Sustainability refers to the ability to maintain logistics support to all users throughout the area of operations for the duration of the operation. This principle focuses the commander's attention on the long-term objectives and capabilities of the force. One of the greatest challenges for logisticians is ensuring that essential material levels are not only achieved to initiate operations, but also maintained throughout the entire operation. For example, supplies such as fuel, food, and equipment must remain available for forces so that operations can continue without interruption. Survivability refers to the capacity of logistics organizations to protect their forces and resources. Logistics units and installations are often high-value targets, so they must be protected to avoid creating vulnerabilities that could affect operations. The physical environment must also be considered since environmental conditions can degrade logistics capabilities. In some situations, survivability may require dispersion and decentralization of logistics units, even if it reduces efficiency in order to protect resources and personnel. The principles of logistics support serve as guides for planning, organizing, managing, and executing logistics operations. They are not rigid rules, but rather tools that help logisticians think critically and plan effectively. By applying these principles, logistics support can be delivered in a way that ensures operational success. Next, we'll talk about War Reserve Material, commonly referred to as WRM. War Reserve Material consists of mission-essential principal end items, secondary items, and munitions required to attain operational objectives in authorized scenarios for sustainability planning and other stockage objectives approved for programming in the Defense Planning Guidance. War Reserve Material includes items that are necessary for achieving operational objectives in authorized scenarios. These items are maintained as part of sustainability planning and other stockage objectives approved through Defense Planning Guidance. WRM inventories are acquired during peacetime. These inventories are flexible, and they provide an expansion capability that allows forces to respond to regional contingencies across the spectrum of operations. Maintaining these inventories helps ensure that necessary resources are available when operational requirements arise. In summary, War Reserve Material provides mission-essential items that are maintained during peacetime in order to support operational objectives and sustain military operations when required. Next is logistics capability of different Marine Air Ground Task Forces. Different types of MAGTAVs deploy with specific amounts of logistics capability that allow them to sustain themselves for a certain number of days during operations. These sustainability timelines vary depending on the size and capability of the force. For a Marine Littoral Regiment, the number of sustainability days is based on the Combat Logistics Battalion's continued tactical logistical support. This includes resupplying expeditionary advanced base sites, managing cache sites, and connecting to higher-level logistics providers. A Marine Expeditionary Unit, or MEU, normally deploys with the logistics capability to sustain itself with some classes of supply for up to 15 days. A Marine Expeditionary Brigade, which is a brigade-sized MAGTAV, can typically sustain itself for up to 30 days. A Marine Expeditionary Force, or MEF, has the largest logistics capability and can normally sustain itself for up to 60 days. These sustainability timelines help determine how long each type of MAGTAV can operate before requiring additional logistics support. Understanding these capabilities helps planners ensure that forces are properly supported during operations. Now let's discuss the Maritime Prepositioning Force, commonly referred to as MPF. The Maritime Prepositioning Force concept involves the deployment of brigade-sized units and the employment of Marine Expeditionary Forces using prepositioned equipment and supplies transported by chartered ships. This system allows military forces to rapidly deploy personnel while equipment and supplies are already positioned and ready for use. The MPF concept reflects brigade-sized unit deployment and Marine Expeditionary Force employment using 13 chartered ships operated by the Military Sealift Command. These ships carry the equipment and supplies needed to support military operations, allowing forces to deploy quickly when required. Several of these ships deploy together to form a Maritime Prepositioning Ship Squadron, commonly referred to as an MPS-RON. Each Maritime Prepositioning Ship Squadron carries equipment and supplies that are administratively embarked based on the table of equipment, individual material readiness lists, and tables of allowances for assigned units. Each squadron is designed to sustain a Marine Expeditionary Force or Marine Expeditionary Brigade-sized unit for up to 30 days in most classes of supply. Before the equipment is used, the MPF fly-in echelon, consisting of personnel and essential air transportable equipment, deploys to an airfield near the port or beach where the ships will be offloaded. Once the maritime prepositioned equipment and supplies are unloaded, they are issued to the arriving personnel and units of the MAGTAV. The Maritime Prepositioning Force concept allows military forces to rapidly deploy personnel while equipment and supplies are already positioned and ready for use, helping ensure that operations can begin quickly and effectively. Before moving forward, let's take a moment to review the key concepts we have covered so far. This recap will help reinforce the important points about the logistics combat element and logistics operations within the MAGTAV. The Logistics Combat Element, or LCE, provides the combat service support required for the MAGTAV to accomplish its mission. This includes functions such as supply, maintenance, transportation, engineering support, medical services, and several other support services. The size of an LCE can vary from a combat logistics company to a marine logistics group, but normally there is one LCE supporting a MAGTAV. Combat service support refers to the capabilities and activities required to sustain operating forces during military operations. These activities include supply, maintenance, transportation, health services, and other support functions that allow forces to continue operating effectively. Within the Marine Corps, combat service support is provided by the Marine Logistics Group. Several important logistics terms help describe how resources and equipment are managed. A limited technical inspection checks equipment to determine maintenance requirements. The Table of Authorized Material identifies materials authorized for use. The Table of Equipment lists the equipment a unit must possess. The Table of Organization defines the personnel structure and capabilities of a unit. Logistics is defined as the science of planning and carrying out the movement and maintenance of forces. It includes managing materials, supporting personnel, acquiring facilities, and providing services required for military operations. Logistics support operates at 3 levels of war. The strategic level focuses on national objectives and long-term planning. The operational level connects strategy to major military operations. The tactical level focuses on the execution of battles and engagements. Tactical logistics includes 6 functional areas that support operations in the field. These areas ensure that personnel, equipment, and resources are properly supported during operations. Logistics operations are guided by several principles, including responsiveness, simplicity, flexibility, sustainability, and survivability. These principles help logisticians plan and execute support effectively during operations. War reserve material consists of mission-essential items and munitions required to achieve operational objectives. These materials are typically acquired during peacetime and maintained for use during military operations. Different MAGTAV formations can sustain operations for different periods of time. A Marine Expeditionary Unit can sustain itself for about 15 days, a Marine Expeditionary Brigade for about 30 days, and a Marine Expeditionary Force for about 60 days. The Maritime Prepositioning Force concept allows equipment and supplies to be prepositioned on ships. Personnel can deploy quickly, and once the ships are offloaded, the equipment and supplies are issued to the arriving MAGTAV units. This recap highlights the foundational concepts of logistics and the logistics combat element within the MAGTAV. Understanding these concepts is essential for recognizing how logistics supports military operations and ensures that forces can sustain their mission effectively.